repast for, in my case, cousin Christopher Newman. My name is Lewis Woodard. I'm from the Woodard side of the clan, who is also part of the Newman clan, of course, folks who know that. This has been a pretty tough occasion for everyone involved, but we have been blessed to have Chris with us for 90 plus years. And I should say 100 plus years. Earth to Lewis, Earth to Lewis, for 100 plus years, and that really is a true blessing. We have a lot of relatives here. It would take the balance of the afternoon to kind of go through the family tree, but I'm sure we've all kind of danced through it since we've been here today. And again, I welcome everyone. Chris was very dear to us all. As a young man, of course, and kind of the oldest of this generation, my generation, and Chris was a big influence on us. Of course, teenagers now, they kind of deal with the telephone and stuff a lot. But I was a kid. Oh, is my mic playing out? In my day, just to briefly say something, we used to spend the winter months building model airplanes, gas model planes. I know some of you know we used to do that stuff. And when springtime came, we'd go to the hobby shop, get the nitromethane fuel, get the batteries and the clips and all that kind of stuff. And during the spring, that's when we get out and start flying those babies, And Chris had a big influence on us because we got, histories of that in the family from my dad and Chris's generation. And that was our big influence on getting into the model airplane stuff. So hopefully the generations coming will start doing that again. Because they still make gas model planes, and of course all of them are RC now, but that hobby is still out there. Chris was born on April 18, 1922. And April 18 is kind of a date that winds its way through our family. My dad's older sister, Irma, whose children are here, her birthday is April 18 also. And they share that birthday, and Chris used to mention that to me. And he was born to Frank and Marie in Mountain Bayou, Mississippi. And we had, as this dictates, relatives and births in Mountain Bayou, and then there was another segment of the family from Vaden, Mississippi. And of course, our family was part of that great migration everyone hears about now that transcended from down there up here to St. Louis, and we're all living together in apartments that were family owned. And the kids all played together like kids all do. They say, we say here he was raised and educated in the Mill Creek area. That's kind of the historical area. Now that's where Harris Stowe College is located. But back then there was a big housing development there, historical development. And the children from that area attended Vashon High School and played together and all such things down in that area. Chris was very industrious, as most of the kids in that generation were. That's why they call them the greatest generation. They were born and came up during the Great Depression. We have some photos of all of them from those days, the 1929s and 30s, and had to deal with, upon reaching mature ages, then they marched off to war, World War II, that is. And in Chris's case, had to participate also in the Korean War. Being a soldier was no secret to Chris because Chris's father is a veteran of World War I. And Uncle Frank, there are photos of Uncle Frank in his uniforms, etc., from the World War I period. So we do have relationships back to the World War I decades. Chris, being industrious as he was, you know, kids had part-time jobs. Chris was the elevator operator, and excuse me, he would run the elevators in the downtown stores, etc. But he saved his money to take flying lessons over at Cahokia Airport. I guess they call it St. Louis Airport now, in St. Louis history. But what tied into that was my dad and Chris, who were a year apart in age, they grew up more as brothers than cousins because of that close age. And my dad's older brothers, I think there was two of them and an older sister. I could call her name, would be Mabel was her name. They took Chris, my dad, all downtown. They had a big parade downtown when Lindbergh, anybody remember that? When he crossed the Atlantic, he was celebrated nationwide, and they had a big parade downtown. And of course, my dad and Chris, little kids, you know, standing on the corner down there looking at this plane. They had an airplane that flew down the street, you know, toward the middle or end of that parade. And that clicked, you know, on Chris, and he said, boy, I gotta do that. That's a cool thing to do. And like the other gentlemen who were in the Tuskegee Airmen, they have all similar questions. Some grew up in rural counties that were near airports, and they witnessed pilots flying airplanes, and they all had the same idea. Boy, I gotta fly one of those things, because it was a new thing back then. So it influenced them, and along came World War II, which was a pivotal point in history, and it changed the world for the United States and all concerned. And Chris had the opportunity to join the United States Air Force, or as it was referred to then, U.S. Army Air Corps, and participate in the flight training at Tuskegee, Alabama. It was pretty tough. I remember him talking to me about it, how they would wash out. Some guys didn't make it. I think Chris's class had about 70 plus people, and only about 20 something made it to the end and got their wings. Well, Chris made it and shipped off to Europe and became the second member of the family to participate in the European theater. Number one was my dad's older brother, and Chris was in the European theater, of course, with the Army Air Corps. He participated and achieved the rank of captain, of course, and he had, how many, 66 missions in WW2, as they say. He had some close calls. I won't go into detail on those, but he did have a couple of close calls, which he talked to me about a lot. And survived World War II, I guess I can say that, you know, for all my dad and everyone. My dad was in the Pacific, but Chris, you know, all those guys survived the war. And of course, Chris was called up to duty again during the Korean War, 1950. And it was in that war, excuse me, where he completed another 97 combat missions in Korea. And he was separated after that war and has many medals, Distinguished Flying Cross, Purple Heart because of injuries suffered during the war, Distinguished Flying Cross with, I believe, 8 clusters, as they call it, 5 from World War II, 3 from Korea, and other wars and medals from his time in the service. He came back home and started doing this thing back here at home with the family. It's all, I'm a result, baby boomers, you know, all of us were a result of the men coming home and getting married and starting their families, etc. And Chris was a working guy and a very smart guy with tools, just like Uncle Frank was. And he could build a Lindell mansion. I think if he really wanted to, he had that type of skill. And he came back, did a lot of remodeling, etc., and married Ernestine Perry in 1948. And from that union, they had 4 children. And he has 6 grandkids, I believe, if I'm counting right, 6? Okay, my numbers are getting fuzzy. And 6 great grandkids, or 7? 6. Wow, 66. Beautiful. Blessed with a good family, big family. And they all loved him greatly. Of course, Chris was preceded in death by his wife Ernestine, his parents, sisters, and 1 daughter, and many cousins of that generation. And his surviving family, 3 children, the nieces, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, all of the cousins, and on down the line, here we are testifying to that. And he was the last of that generation to survive. We used to always talk about it. I'd write some stuff down. And of course, I'm left-handed, and Uncle Frank was left-handed, Chris's father. And Chris would be at the table seeing me write something. He says, "Boy, there you go, being like the old man." That's what he called Uncle Frank, the old man. There you go, being like the old man again, you know. But that's us lefties, we stick together on that. He'll be remembered, of course, for his historic mark as a Tuskegee Airman. If you haven't heard about the Tuskegee Airmen, you must be from Venus, from under a rock somewhere, because I think since they were, in quotes, discovered back in the mid to late 70s and